Senator Chris Van Hollen asked a simple question about the nearly $1.8 billion Anti-Weaponization Fund. Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible? Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said anybody can apply if they believe they were victimized. Van Hollen asked why not make a rule excluding violent criminals. Blanche said he's not the one setting the rules, even though he appoints 4 of the 5 commissioners.
Are there going to be rules that say that if you've assaulted a Capitol Hill police officer or committed a violent crime, you will not be eligible? Why not make that a rule?
Then Van Hollen compared the fund to the Keepsiegel case. In that case, a federal judge approved the settlement. No judge has approved this fund. Blanche said that's not a big difference. Van Hollen said it is. A judge provides independent oversight. Blanche insisted there was no independence in Keepsiegel. A judge signed off on it. Blanche is wrong.
Did a judge sign off on this case?
No.
A judge did sign off on the other one.
Yes, but your question was whether it's a big difference. It's not.
Then Van Hollen asked Blanche to commit to meeting with Epstein survivors. Blanche said he already has. Survivors told Van Hollen otherwise. Blanche accused Van Hollen of lying. Van Hollen told him never to do that again. He reminded Blanche that lying to Congress is a criminal offense. This is not a hearing. It's a confrontation. And Blanche is losing. Let's watch.
Van Hollen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, this is an outrageous, unprecedented slush fund that you set up. Simple question. Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible for this fund?
Well, as it makes plain, anybody is
just let me know if they're eligible for the fund.
As was made plain yesterday, anybody in this country is eligible to apply if they believe they are a victim of weaponization.
Mr. Attorney General, let me ask you this. Are there going to be rules that say that if you've assaulted a Capitol Hill police officer or committed a violent crime, you will not be eligible? Why not make that a rule?
I expect that, because I'm not one of the commissioners setting up the rules, I expect that there will be rules.
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members, aren't you, Mr. Attorney General?
Pardon me?
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members.
I am appointing all 5 members.
You can certainly set up the rules. I would hope you would make a rule that anyone convicted of assaulting a police officer or a violent crime is simply not eligible. They should not apply.
Well,
let me ask you this, because you compared it to the Keepsiegel case. But I think you know full well that in that case, the settlement agreement was approved by a federal judge, including the payments to people who were not originally parties to the lawsuit. No federal judge has approved this fund, have they, Mr. Attorney General?
No federal judge did approve this.
So that's a big difference between this case and the case that you compared it to.
No, it's not.
Did a judge sign off on this case?
No.
A judge did sign off on the other one.
Yes, but your question was whether it's a big difference. It's not.
Of course it is, because that allows for an independent person to look at it rather than the
There was no independence. There was no independence. There was a single commissioner. A judge signed off on it. A judge had nothing to do with deciding the money.
There was a judge who looked at it and signed off on it. So to compare that case to this one is incredibly deceptive. Let me ask you this about the Epstein case, because as we speak, many Epstein survivors are in New York. They're reading portions of the Epstein files about the abuse that they suffered. Otherwise, they might have been here with us today. At a House hearing, your predecessor refused to acknowledge the pain experienced by some of those victims when the administration improperly released their names and identifying information. So I want to know where you stand. I spoke to the representatives of some of the Epstein survivors yesterday. They are extremely frustrated that you keep calling for people to come forward with more evidence, but you have not met with them to hear their stories. So simple question. If I connect you with these survivors, will you meet with them?
Absolutely, and what you just said is false. I have met with them. I've met with many of the lawyers for the survivors of victims, as did Attorney General Bondi. So whoever told you that, unfortunately, gave you bad information.
Okay.
But I would encourage them to reach out to the Department of Justice, because like we do every single day, we absolutely care for victims, and we absolutely want to hear from them and their lawyers.
Well, I've been told directly from the representatives they've not had a chance, at least this group, to meet with you. So
Did they
anyway,
represent
good.
that they asked?
So I'm glad to hear
did
that.
Did they represent they asked for a meeting?
Can I ask you to commit that the Justice Department will not recommend a pardon for anyone named in the Epstein files?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
Can you commit that the Justice Department, you, the Acting Attorney General, will not recommend a pardon for people named in the Epstein files?
When you say people named, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of, quote, people named.
How about Ghislaine Maxwell? Can you commit that you will?
Yes, I can commit to that, of course.
Okay. Let me go back to this slush fund, because there's also an individual who, after being pardoned by the president, went on to molest 2 children. And that person actually tried to buy the silence of these children by saying that he would pay them some of the funds that he was hoping to get from your slush fund. Can you commit to making the rule so that that person is not eligible for a payout under this fund?
Well, you're obviously lying in your question, because there's no way that this person committed to that. Because the slush fund, as you call it, which is not, didn't exist.
I'm certainly
but I
not
can
lying.
commit.
Mr. Attorney General, don't ever do that again. I am reporting
do what again?
What he said. He said on the expectation that he hoped to get some of the funds from a payout. He's been hearing
No,
what
you
we've
said
all
from
been
the
hearing.
slush fund, Senator, and that didn't exist when he said that.
This is the fund that the president and all of you have been telegraphing all along that you're going to use to help the president's friends.
Can you point to a
Mr.
single
Attorney General,
telegraph
I have a
I
last
made?
question.
What telegraph did I
I have a last question for
Okay.
you. Do you know that it is a criminal offense to lie to Congress?
I am very well aware of that.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Senator Chris Van Hollen came to the hearing armed with facts and specific questions, methodically pressing a witness determined to dodge every one of them. And instead of answers, he got evasion, deflection, and eventually the witness accusing him of lying. The central issue is the nearly $1.8 billion Anti-Weaponization Fund. Van Hollen asked a simple question. Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible? Blanche said anybody can apply if they believe they were victimized. He did not say no. He did not say those individuals would be excluded. He said anybody. Van Hollen asked why not make a rule excluding violent criminals. Blanche said he's not the one setting up the rules. Van Hollen pointed out that Blanche is appointing 4 of the 5 commissioners. He could set the rules. He could ensure that violent criminals are excluded. He is choosing not to. Then Van Hollen went to the Keepsiegel comparison. Blanche had invoked that case as precedent for the fund. Van Hollen pointed out a crucial difference. In Keepsiegel, a federal judge approved the settlement agreement, including payments to people who were not originally parties to the lawsuit. No judge has approved this fund. Blanche said that's not a big difference. Van Hollen said it is, because a judge provides independent oversight. Blanche insisted there was no independence in Keepsiegel, but there was. A judge looked at it and signed off on it. That is the definition of judicial oversight. Blanche either does not understand that or is pretending not to. Either way, his credibility took a hit. Van Hollen then pivoted to the Epstein files. This is where the exchange got personal. Van Hollen said survivors' representatives told him that Blanche has not met with them. Blanche said that is false. He has met with them. He has met with many lawyers for survivors. He accused Van Hollen of being given bad information. Someone is lying. Either the survivors' representatives are lying, Van Hollen is lying, or Blanche is lying. Van Hollen did not back down. He simply noted that he was glad to hear Blanche would meet with them, and moved on. Then Van Hollen asked Blanche to commit that the Justice Department will not recommend a pardon for anyone named in the Epstein files. Blanche asked for clarification. Van Hollen said Ghislaine Maxwell. Blanche said yes, he can commit to that. That is a concrete promise. It remains to be seen whether it will be kept. Then Van Hollen dropped the bombshell. He said there is an individual who was pardoned by the president, then went on to molest 2 children, and then tried to buy the silence of those children by telling them he would pay them from this slush fund. He asked Blanche to commit to making that person ineligible. Blanche accused Van Hollen of lying. He said there was no way that person committed to that because the slush fund didn't exist when he said it. Van Hollen told Blanche never to do that again. He said he was reporting what the person said. He did not back down. The accusation of lying is a serious moment. In a congressional hearing, a senator accusing a witness of lying is not routine. It is a declaration that the witness has crossed a line. Blanche crossed it. He called a United States senator a liar to his face. Van Hollen's response was measured but firm. Don't ever do that again. He then reminded Blanche that lying to Congress is a criminal offense. Blanche said he is well aware of that. The implication is clear. Be careful what you say. The underlying issue here is the nature of the fund itself. Van Hollen called it a slush fund. Blanche objected to the term, but he did not explain why it is inaccurate. A nearly $1.8 billion fund controlled by the Attorney General, with 5 commissioners appointed by the Attorney General, with no judicial oversight to compensate people who claim they were weaponized. That is the definition of a slush fund. It is money set aside for a vague purpose, controlled by political appointees, with no clear criteria for distribution. Keepsiegel had a judge. This fund does not. That is not a minor difference. It is the difference between accountability and arbitrary power. Van Hollen's final question was the most important. He asked Blanche if he knows that lying to Congress is a criminal offense. Blanche said yes. Van Hollen said he was glad to hear that. The message is clear. The senator is watching. The record is being kept. And if Blanche or anyone else in the administration misleads Congress, there will be consequences. This hearing did not resolve the questions about the fund. It did not produce a commitment to exclude violent criminals. It did not produce a meeting between Blanche and the Epstein survivors. But it did produce something valuable. It produced a record of evasion. It produced a moment where the acting attorney general called a senator a liar. And it produced a warning. Lying to Congress is a crime. That warning will hang over every future exchange between this committee and this administration.